this project is entitled Toward the Common Good.
Yeah.
This is the progress toward the more broader good. We call this project the Common Good. Toward the Common Good.
You must be aware that your project can easily be appropriated by some kind of this new age, peace-loving, common good, all together. No, common good is a matter of struggle. The only common good is common struggle for freedom.
僕は皆さんを見るとそういう新しい世界だと思います。
Imagine a good common good society. It's relatively easy by comparison with imagining who is able to put it in reality.
Hey! I'll see you again. Okay, let's go.
You have the bottle?
Yes,
Okay,
I have.
please.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. I really want to hug you.
Alright, okay. What I am doing? I got your questions.
Oh, yeah.
So I am
yes,
writing
okay.
my I started
Wow.
this morning
Oh, okay.
towards the common good.
Yeah.
This is started, and this is my answer.
Okay.
And then consumerism and ethics,
Uh-huh.
and this is my
Oh my
answer.
god.
And then the question of who,
Uh-huh.
and this is my answer, not finished yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I will write it down,
Okay.
and there will be no problem for you, and that's
Uh-huh.
very important.
Very
thing.
good.
And I very much hope that I will finish it. How urgent it is.
Not that urgent.
Well, I will finish it next week. It's okay.
Perfect. That's good. That'll be okay.
Right.
Yeah. We call this project the Common Good, Toward the Common Good project. So, as I mentioned in the email, to what extent is it useful or meaningful to bring the question about the common good?
Well, it's a major trouble of our times, really. That, in fact, the debate, the discussion, the thinking, the quarreling about the model of good society is off the agenda, no longer on political agenda. And the major problem, I think, is not so much that people lost imagination. We are all imaginative people, as they were, as our ancestors were many hundreds years ago, or even thousands years ago. What is happening is not the question, the trouble with the question, what is to be done. We have all sorts of ideas, everybody. I am sure you have, I have, and everybody I talk to has some recipe what to do. The difficulty is that there's no one who do it. Imagine a good common good, a good society. It's relatively easy by comparison with imagining who is able to put it in reality, to implement the idea. What I'm writing about very often, we live through the divorce between power and politics.
Okay.
Power, in my view, is ability to have things done. Politics is the ability to decide which things ought to be done. Now, if you divorce these two things, then you have on one hand power without any popular control, guided by completely alien forces, faraway forces, And what is even worse than that, forces which have no address, anonymous forces, like markets. What do you mean markets? There are people behind it, but we don't know them. You know, what we see is the product of their activity, so we can't even resist very easily. When you go into combat, when you have a war with your neighbor, then you know who is an enemy, whom to shoot. But in this case, there is none like that, nothing like that. So power without political control on the one hand, and on the other hand, you have politics which suffers of deficit of power. Governments may be good-willing, but they are incapable of delivering on their promise. They don't have the power enough. So that's a very, very difficult situation which I think cannot be sustained in the long run. That's why following Keith Tester, whom you know, who reminded us of that, we are living in a period of interregnum. And interregnum means that the old ways already don't work, but new ways of doing things have not been invented. That's the problem with common good. Why should we discuss common good if there is no one to implement it? The main point now is to find forces which are capable to replace this old system which doesn't work and take things in their own hands.
About the banality of consumerist evil, that's what we just call it. So if you could get a chance to eliminate one single evil on this consuming,
Yeah,
planet,
well, one single, that I'm incapable of answering, really. I don't, it's not football. Football is a league, you can measure which team is better. And, among evils, there is no league. Each one evil needs to be dealt with separately. But as far as consumerism is concerned, I am recently worried about the following things. That, the consumer economy has the general tendency to colonize the unused territory, the virgin territory. Something which people were doing without giving money, without buying, without shopping. For example, this very, very, very spectacular example is now people walking the street and keeping bottles with water. They are not in Sahara, it's not a desert, so there's plenty of water around. But nevertheless, they are convinced now that they will be thirsty when they go out. I lived all my life and had plenty of water without ever carrying bottles with myself. Right. So that's an example. What is happening now, however, for the first time, I think, is that consumer markets colonize the territory of morality. And that's very serious. That's very serious. Why it is very serious? What I mean by colonizing morality. We are living in a very competitive society. We have to prove that we deserve our salary. We have to work very hard. And we have mobile telephones, so which means that the borderline between office time and home time, work time and leisure time is abolished. Wherever you are, you always carry your telephone, so you are always on a beck and call, and your boss may every time phone you and demand to do a job. Which means that you are not able to dedicate as much time as you feel to people whom you love, to your friends. You know that you feel that you should sit with your son or daughter when they come back from school and help them to go through the experiences of the day and listen to their troubles, to their problems and so on, but you can't do it. The same applies to you and your wife. You can't spend so much time as you would like to with her and listen to all her worries and give her advice and be compassionate and so on. You can't deceive your moral self. You can accept official apologies from a power, but you can't really placate your conscience. Conscience is much more severe than any court made by people. But fortunately there are markets who come to help. Markets come to help, they offer you beautiful. You want her to be happy? Buy them. You want your children to be happy? Buy sneakers or buy them this toy or that toy and so on. And you are doing it. These gifts act as tranquilizers. They mitigate the pain, moral pain, which you feel that you are not good father, that you are not good husband, and that's a very, very, very painful feeling. But fortunately, you use this tranquilizer, you compensated the pangs of conscience, mitigated them. And that's very dangerous. Why? Well, we all are after anesthetics, we all are after painkillers, and that's very good that we have them, but no one proposes to completely abolish the pain nerves, to amputate them. Why? Because feeling of pain plays very important role. It is a signal that there is something wrong, right? If you were completely painless and didn't have the feeling of pain, you couldn't experience, you would be in awful trouble, because the disease will gather inside you and you won't attend the doctor or take medicine because you would be unaware of until it is too late. Now these moral tranquilizers, which are produced by markets, are very dangerous, precisely for this reason, because they disable you from feeling that something is wrong with your family, with your neighbors, with your partner, and so on. That's why we have the phenomenon which I call the fragilization of human bonds. You don't feel that something is wrong. You just celebrate your togetherness by buying ever more expensive gifts to each other. After all, I am caring because I brought this wonderful dress, or I don't know whatever you are buying, new washing machine, or 105th pair of shoes, doesn't matter what. But you don't feel that your really intimate relations with another human being deteriorate. And when you wake up, it is too late. It's already beyond repair. So colonization of morality by markets is very, very dangerous thing.
So then how could we spark the people to give them a message of being moral, which is going to give you a more happier, more or a meaningful, more meaning to your life, but they don't really believe it is message.
You see, it's my deep belief. I have studied quite a lot of societies, some of them from personal experience, because I lived through different regimes in my life, and very many of them from what I read in anthropology, in history, societies which I didn't experience myself, but I read about them from people who know. And the conclusions I draw is that one thing did not change over centuries. and it doesn't differ from one place to another. We're west, east, south, north, doesn't matter. The one thing which doesn't change is the difficulty of becoming happy. So in every system of making happy yourself, there are hidden ambushes, difficulties. From this point of view, there is very little change. It is always the pursuit of happiness always differentiates people into happy and unhappy. Not only the people differentiates, but differentiates the periods in human life. You go through happy and unhappy periods. I always quote in this context where we discuss happiness the great romantic German poet Wolfgang Goethe. And Goethe, when he was close to my present age, not that old as I am now, but almost, he was also asked the same question, are you happy? And he answered, I had very happy life. But, he added, I can't remember a single happy week. So Goethe understood what is involved, you know. You can't be in a state of permanent happiness. Happy you are when you overcome something which troubled you, which worried you, a difficulty, a challenge. Then you are happy. But it is, you know, time, a moment of happiness in a sense. A happy life does not mean repetition of happy days, day by day by day by day. The same Goethe wrote in one of his poems that there is no worse, no more awful things than a row of sunny days. Because if they are coming in a row, you are getting bored. You are falling in despair when nothing happens, how boring it is, how tiring, and so on, so on. And that's a very, very clever but very treacherous advice which we are getting from, I don't know, you don't publish commercials here in Indigo.
No.
But most magazines do. And which magazine you open, there are the same suggestions you read, that you can be permanently on every occasion happy. If only you knew to what shop to go and what commodity to look for, you would be constantly happy. Now that is a big lie. That's absolutely impossible. We are not constructed biologically in such a way as to live in a state of constant bliss. We are happy, well, to give you such an example, if I had a toothache and suddenly it's stopped, I am happy. But I never can wake up in the morning and feel happy because I don't have toothache. That's not a reason to be happy. Well, it is another illusion which we suffer from and which prevents us from practicing what I call the art of life properly.
But when I was reading your book, The Art of Life, there was a chapter called We, the Artist of Life, which is very impressive for me to read. But people in this time don't really have an ability to make things. They just consume things to make them happy. But this word art, which came from Greek word the techne, which means producing things. But then which capability could make us to construct this thing called happy life or the art of life.
Well, first of all, I would like to say that pursuit of happiness is eternal. In every society, that's what moves people. They want, everybody prefers to be happy than to be unhappy. That's quite natural. I have nothing against it. The only problem is that to know what does it involve, this pursuit of happiness. One illusion I already mentioned, the idea that you can create a continuously happy life, which is out of the question. There is no possibility of doing it. And the other illusion is that difficulty in life, challenge, difficult to confront, difficult to resolve, and happiness, they are on two different sides of the front line. They are fighting each other. That's not true. That's also illusion, because in fact they belong to the same family. They belong to life. They belong to life, and life gives you times of happiness precisely because it has difficulties. If we didn't have difficulties, if you never suffered, if you never experienced something outrageous, something off-putting, something very unpleasant, uncomfortable, if you didn't live through discomfort, you will never know what comfort means. If you never had an unhappiness, you would never know what happiness means. That's the problem. These are all undetachable aspects of being alive. The only recipe to avoid unhappiness is to commit suicide. Then, of course, you lose happiness as well. But at least you can be absolutely certain that there will be no unhappiness in front of you. I am quite serious, I'm not joking, really. That's the only real, genuine recipe against unhappiness. Otherwise, if you decided to stay alive, you must be prepared that there will be difficulties. And overcoming the difficulties is precisely the recipe for happiness.
Which could be the most important task or duty that we, the young generation, should undertake?
Yeah, well, you see, I think social sciences, I'm practicing social sciences now for 65 years, and won't be practicing them much longer because I'm very old. But my conclusion is that what is our mission, our vocation, our calling, if you want, is to clarify to men and women, to ordinary people, what is at stake, how the world in which they live is constructed. All these hidden mechanisms, springs, connections, which are not visible from the perspective of daily life. Daily life is very busy. People try to make their living, they work very hard, they fall in love, they have families, they take care of their children. They are very busy, too busy to actually sit down and think, what is behind my neighborhood? I am acting, but the consequences of my action do not depend only on what I am doing, depend on all sorts of circumstances around, which I don't see point blank. So they are too busy to get this sort of knowledge, and we, the people working in humanities, have the privilege. We have free time to think, to read, to observe, to make conclusions and so on. So we can offer some sort of a wider horizon. Perhaps it will help people to make their life. Perhaps, I'm saying perhaps, because in the final account, it depends on them. Some people will say, well, there are two attitudes which they may take. One attitude is, going back to Aristotle in ancient time, that good life is life lived in a good society. If you want to be happy, you need to take care of happiness of your society. Good, common good, as you say. That's one attitude. But the attitude which is now suggested by all the pressures, or the propaganda, or the advertisement of markets, consumer markets, is a different one. The recipe for happiness is not making society better, but making better your place inside society, which is beyond repair. So you can't do anything about society. So at least try to find a relatively quiet, relatively comfortable, relatively pleasant place for you and your family. You don't remember the times, but I lived through the nuclear panic after the Second World War, when people were expecting nuclear war any time. And then the propaganda was buy yourself anti-nuclear shelter. The same, very much the same situation we have now. We are not afraid of nuclear war, but we are afraid of say, credit collapse, catastrophe of the markets, economic depression, all sorts of catastrophes like that. But we don't believe any longer, most people don't believe any longer, that you can prevent these disasters. They will come. So what you should care of is to find yourself a shelter. Not nuclear shelter, but bank shelter, for example. So somehow a comfortable, quiet place. Everybody else will be affected, but you will emerge safe and unscathed. So two different attitudes. From what I am writing, I have this unpleasant feeling that some people may read it and draw conclusions. Well, let's do something about society. Something wrong with our system. And some others, on the contrary, they may say, well, this is beyond salvation. Why should we bother? Let's better make money and keep them in the safe place, somehow to avoid the catastrophe. Which means that what we are doing in social sciences is very much like what metaphorically was beautifully described by Theodor Adorno. Theodor Adorno, well, I don't know whether he did it himself or whether it was imputed to him, but he used the metaphor of the sealed bottle. You make a message. Message which contains the advice what ought to be done. You put it in the bottle, you seal the bottle, you throw it in the sea. Counting on that some ship will be passing by, there will be a sailor on the board of the ship who will see the bottle, and he will take make effort to jump and pick it up, and then he will unseal it, and then he will find paper inside, and he will pick up the paper, open it, and hopefully he will understand the language. And when finally he understands the language, it is still up to him whether he will draw any conclusions from that or not. So there are many unknown variables in all this equation. We are doing our job, you are doing our job, publishing things, giving it to people, they can read, they can be wiser and so on. But ultimately what they will do with it doesn't depend on you. And one has to reconcile oneself to this idea and make the effort and strain himself and work very hard despite the uncertainty. There is a Polish proverb that says, guest comes to the house as if God came to the house.
You know the Nepal? Nepal is customs too.
The same.
Same.
Children, that was children. Two boys, two boys and two girls.
Wow.
So the fourth generation.
Wow. they
I
here
live too long.
are they in UK?
really
But I finished making children when I was 12.